Every morning at exactly 7:23 a.m., commuters at Penn Station hear the same announcement echoing through the speakers. Next stop, Central Avenue. Please stand clear of the closing doors. There's just one problem. That train route was abandoned over 20 years ago, and the man who recorded that announcement disappeared without a trace in 1998. His name was Michael Roberts, and this is the story of how one routine train ride became one of the most baffling mysteries in railway history. His name was Michael Roberts, and by the end of this video, you'll understand why his disappearance led to congressional hearings, multiple arrests, and a complete overhaul of railway safety protocols. But first, let me tell you about the discovery that investigators made 26 years later that proves this wasn't just a tragic accident. Michael Roberts was the kind of man you'd trust with your life on a daily commute. At 34 years old, he'd been working as a train engineer for Metropolitan Transit for nearly a decade. Punctual to the second, professional in every interaction, and proud of his spotless safety record. His wife, Linda, would later tell investigators something that still gives me chills. Michael had been increasingly worried about safety violations he'd witnessed at work. Every morning over coffee, he'd express concerns about deferred maintenance, rushed schedules, and pressure from management to cut corners. "They're pushing us too hard," he'd tell her. "Something's going to give, and when it does, people are going to get hurt." Now keep that conversation in mind because it becomes crucial to understanding what happened next. October 15th, 1998, started like any other day. Michael kissed Linda goodbye at 5:30 a.m., grabbed his thermos of coffee, and drove his Honda Civic to the depot. Security footage shows him arriving at 5:52 a.m., 8 minutes early, as always. The weather was crisp, autumn leaves were falling, and the morning commute promised to be routine. Train 847, the 7:15 a.m. express to Central Avenue, was scheduled to make 4 stops: Penn Station, Riverside, Oakmont, and finally Central Avenue. A 45-minute journey that Michael had completed without incident over 1,200 times. But on this particular morning, something was different. Something that would expose a conspiracy that reached the highest levels of Metropolitan Transit Authority. Before I tell you what happened on that train, I need you to understand something crucial about the investigation that followed. The FBI brought in their white-collar crime division, spent 2 years following a paper trail, and uncovered evidence of systematic corruption that shocked even seasoned investigators. What they discovered was far more sinister than a simple disappearance. At 7:15 a.m. sharp, Train 847 pulled out of Penn Station with 89 passengers aboard. Everything proceeded normally until 7:28 a.m. as the train approached Riverside Station. Passengers later reported that the train seemed to slow down more gradually than usual. Then, instead of the smooth stop they were accustomed to, the train lurched to an abrupt halt about 200 yards before the platform. That's when passenger Maria Santos noticed something strange. The engineer's cabin door was wide open, she told police. "I could see inside, and there was no one there." At 7:32 a.m., the automated safety systems kicked in, bringing the train to a complete stop. With no engineer present to override the safety protocols, the train remained motionless as confused passengers began to panic. When transit police boarded the train 25 minutes later, they found 89 bewildered passengers, a fully operational locomotive, and absolutely no trace of Michael Roberts. His engineer's cap was folded neatly on his seat. His thermos, still warm, sat unopened on the control panel. His radio was clipped to his belt, which was hanging on the hook where he always kept it. But Michael himself had simply vanished. Now you might be thinking this sounds like Michael had some kind of breakdown and decided to walk away from his life. Maybe he jumped from the train at the previous stop, but what investigators discovered next will shatter that theory completely. The initial investigation was swift and thorough. Transit police sealed off the entire engineer's cabin and called in the FBI's missing persons unit. The working theory was straightforward. Michael Roberts had somehow left the train at Penn Station and disappeared into the crowd. But that theory fell apart within hours. Security footage from Penn Station showed Michael in his engineer's cabin as the train departed. More crucially, the automated systems recorded his presence continuously until 7:27 a.m., just 1 minute before passengers noticed the empty cabin. Detective Ray Morrison, the lead investigator, was baffled. In 20 years of police work, I'd never seen anything like it, he later said. Engineers don't just vanish from moving trains. There has to be a logical explanation. The FBI expanded their search. They interviewed every passenger, every transit employee, every person who had been anywhere near the railway that morning. They brought in bloodhounds to track Michael's scent. The dogs followed his trail to the engineer's cabin and then lost it completely at the exact spot where the train had made its emergency stop. They examined the train car inch by inch, looking for hidden compartments, emergency exits, or any possible way Michael could have left the train without being seen. They found nothing. Most puzzling of all was the timing. Between 7:15 a.m. when the train left Penn Station and 7:28 a.m. when it stopped, Michael's presence was continuously monitored by multiple automated systems. For him to have left the train during that window, he would have had to somehow bypass sophisticated safety mechanisms that were specifically designed to prevent such incidents. But here's the detail that would crack the case wide open. 3 weeks into the investigation, Detective Morrison received a phone call that changed everything. What he learned from that conversation would transform this missing person case into a federal investigation that would expose corruption at the highest levels of the transit authority. The caller was someone Morrison never expected to hear from. Detective Morrison? This is Janet Walsh from the Transit Authority's Internal Affairs Department. I think you need to know something about Michael Roberts that wasn't in his official file. Janet had been conducting her own investigation into safety violations within the transit system. What she discovered would explain not only Michael's disappearance, but also why powerful people wanted him gone. Michael had been documenting safety violations for months, Janet explained. He was building a case against his supervisors, and he was planning to go public. Morrison rushed to Janet's office and reviewed the evidence. Michael had been secretly recording conversations, photographing maintenance issues, and collecting documents that proved Metropolitan Transit was systematically cutting corners on safety to increase profits. The evidence was damning. Brake systems that hadn't been properly maintained in years. Safety inspections that were falsified. Pressure on engineers to exceed safe operating speeds to meet impossible schedules. And most shocking of all, a culture of retaliation against employees who reported safety concerns. Michael had enough evidence to bring down half the management team, Janet said, and they knew it. Morrison realized this wasn't a missing person case anymore. This was a potential murder investigation, but the trail had gone cold. If Michael had been killed, where was the body? And how had someone managed to remove him from a moving train without leaving any trace? The answer would come from an unexpected source. The breakthrough came from Michael's own meticulous record-keeping. While searching his home office, investigators found a hidden safe containing copies of all his evidence against the transit authority. But more importantly, they found his personal journal from the weeks leading up to his disappearance. The final entry, dated October 14, 1998, one day before Michael vanished, contained information that would change the entire direction of the investigation. They know. Supervisor Jenkins pulled me aside today and told me to be careful about spreading rumors. He said accidents happen to engineers who don't follow protocol. I'm scared, but I can't let them keep putting passengers at risk. I'm meeting with the federal safety inspector tomorrow morning before my shift. If something happens to me, Linda needs to know about the evidence in the safe. Morrison immediately contacted the Federal Railroad Administration and learned that Michael had indeed scheduled a meeting with Inspector Thomas Bradley for 6 a.m. on October 15th. The meeting was supposed to take place at the depot just before Michael's shift. But when investigators interviewed Bradley, they discovered something shocking. Michael had never shown up for the meeting. Bradley had waited until 6:30 a.m. before giving up and leaving. This meant that Michael had arrived at work at 5:52 a.m., as security footage confirmed, but had somehow disappeared before his 6 a.m. meeting with the federal inspector. The time frame had just narrowed significantly. Armed with this new information, investigators focused their search on the depot itself. They brought in forensic teams, cadaver dogs, and ground-penetrating radar equipment. They were looking for evidence of what had happened to Michael during that crucial 38-minute window. What they found in the depot's maintenance area would break the case wide open. Hidden beneath a stack of old railway ties, investigators discovered Michael's personal effects: his wallet, his keys, and most importantly, his backup copies of the evidence he'd been collecting. The items showed signs of being hastily buried. But they also found something else. Soil samples revealed traces of blood that DNA testing would later confirm belonged to Michael Roberts. The blood pattern suggested that Michael had been attacked in the maintenance area, possibly killed, and his body removed from the premises. The investigation now had a crime scene, but they still needed to find Michael's body and identify his killer. The answer would come from surveillance footage that investigators had initially overlooked. When investigators re-examined the depot's security footage with fresh eyes, they discovered something that had been hiding in plain sight. The footage revealed not just what happened to Michael Roberts, but also the identity of the people responsible for his disappearance. What they saw would lead to the biggest corruption scandal in transportation history. The breakthrough came when investigators realized they had been looking at the wrong time period. While they had focused on the morning of October 15th, the real crime had occurred the night before. Security footage from October 14th showed Michael arriving at the depot at 11:47 p.m., 7 hours before his scheduled shift. He was carrying a briefcase and appeared to be heading toward the administrative offices. At 11:52 p.m., two men approached Michael near the maintenance area. The footage was grainy, but investigators could make out what appeared to be a confrontation. Michael seemed to be backing away from the men, his hands raised defensively. At 11:54 p.m., the men grabbed Michael and forced him into a maintenance shed. The footage showed them emerging alone 3 minutes later, carrying what appeared to be a large tarp. Using facial recognition software, investigators identified the two men as Robert Jenkins, Michael's direct supervisor, and Tony Castellano, the depot's head of security. Both men had been implicated in Michael's evidence of safety violations, but the most shocking discovery was yet to come. Further analysis of the footage revealed a third person directing the operation from the shadows. Margaret Foster, the Deputy Director of Operations for the entire Metropolitan Transit Authority. The investigation revealed the full scope of the conspiracy. Margaret Foster had been running a systematic scheme to cut safety costs while inflating budget reports to pocket millions in federal safety grants. When Michael threatened to expose the operation, Foster ordered his elimination. The plan was sophisticated. After killing Michael in the maintenance shed, the conspirators disposed of his body in a furnace used to burn railway debris. The furnace was scheduled to be decommissioned the following week, ensuring that any evidence would be destroyed, but they still needed to explain Michael's disappearance. That's where the elaborate train scenario came in. On the morning of October 15, Jenkins used his administrative access to alter the automated safety systems. He programmed them to simulate Michael's presence in the engineer's cabin until 7:27 a.m., when the systems would register his disappearance and trigger an emergency stop. The plan was to make it look like Michael had suffered some kind of breakdown and jumped from the train. With no body to be found, the case would eventually be closed as a missing person investigation. But the conspirators made one crucial mistake. The mistake was underestimating Michael's thoroughness. Unknown to his killers, Michael had been secretly recording conversations with his supervisors for weeks. The recordings, hidden in his home office, provided direct evidence of the conspiracy. In one particularly damning recording from October 10th, Margaret Foster could be heard saying, "Roberts is becoming a problem. He's got enough evidence to bring down the entire operation. We need to find a permanent solution." Another recording captured Robert Jenkins responding, "I know people who can make problems disappear. It'll look like an accident." But the most shocking evidence came from financial records seized during FBI raids. The investigation revealed that Foster's scheme had been operating for over 5 years, diverting more than $50 million in federal safety funds into personal accounts. The diverted money was supposed to have been used for brake maintenance, track repairs, and safety equipment upgrades. Instead, it had been used to purchase luxury homes, expensive cars, and offshore investment accounts. The scheme had directly resulted in 23 safety violations that could have caused catastrophic accidents. In essence, Foster and her co-conspirators had been gambling with the lives of thousands of daily commuters. On March 15, 2000, nearly 18 months after Michael's disappearance, federal agents simultaneously arrested Margaret Foster, Robert Jenkins, and Tony Castellano on charges of conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, in violation of federal transportation safety laws. The arrest sent shockwaves through the transportation industry. Margaret Foster had been widely respected in the field and had even received awards for her supposed commitment to safety improvements. But the investigation revealed that Foster had been living a double life. While publicly advocating for safety improvements, she had been systematically undermining the very systems designed to protect passengers. The evidence against all three conspirators was overwhelming. In addition to the recordings and financial records, investigators had found physical evidence linking them to Michael's murder and the subsequent cover-up. Faced with the possibility of life in prison, Tony Castellano agreed to cooperate with prosecutors. His testimony provided the final pieces of the puzzle, detailing exactly how Michael had been killed and how his body had been disposed of. The trial of the century, as media called it, began in September 2001. The prosecution, led by Assistant U.S. Attorney Sarah Mitchell, presented a case that shocked the nation. Michael Roberts wasn't just a missing person, he was a hero who had died trying to protect the safety of thousands of daily commuters. His evidence had exposed a conspiracy that reached the highest levels of transportation authority. The defense attorneys argued that their clients were being scapegoated for systemic problems within the transit authority. They claimed that the pressure to cut costs came from federal budget constraints, not personal greed. But the evidence was insurmountable. Financial records showed millions of dollars flowing into personal accounts. Recorded conversations revealed the callous disregard for passenger safety. And Tony Castellano's testimony provided vivid details of Michael's final moments. The jury deliberated for just 6 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all counts. Margaret Foster was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Robert Jenkins received 45 years. Tony Castellano, in exchange for his cooperation, received 25 years. But the impact of the case extended far beyond these individual convictions. Michael Roberts' death sparked the most comprehensive transportation safety reforms in American history. The Michael Roberts Transit Safety Act, signed into law in 2002, established new oversight mechanisms and whistleblower protections that are still in place today. The act created an independent inspector general for all transit authorities, mandatory safety audits, and criminal penalties for officials who retaliate against safety whistleblowers. It also established the Michael Roberts Foundation, which provides legal protection and financial support for transportation workers who report safety violations. Linda Roberts, Michael's widow, became a powerful advocate for transportation safety. She testified before Congress, consulted with transportation authorities nationwide, and helped establish the annual Michael Roberts Safety Award, given to workers who demonstrate exceptional commitment to passenger safety. Michael didn't die in vain, Linda said during the congressional hearings. His death exposed a system that was broken and dangerous. The reforms that resulted from his sacrifice have saved countless lives. The case also led to a complete overhaul of the Metropolitan Transit Authority. 7 additional officials were indicted on corruption charges, and the entire management structure was replaced with federal oversight. Today, the Michael Roberts case is studied in law schools, business schools, and transportation management programs across the country. It serves as a powerful reminder of what can happen when profit is prioritized over safety. The depot where Michael worked has been renamed the Michael Roberts Transportation Center. A memorial plaque honors his commitment to safety and his ultimate sacrifice in protecting the public. But perhaps the most fitting tribute to Michael's legacy is the fact that no similar corruption scheme has been uncovered in the American transportation system since the reforms were implemented. The oversight mechanisms he died trying to create have prevented countless potential tragedies. The Michael Roberts Foundation has supported over 200 transportation safety whistleblowers, providing them with legal protection and financial support. Many of these cases have resulted in significant safety improvements and additional prosecutions of corrupt officials. Linda Roberts spent years fighting for justice for her husband. The legal battle took its toll on her health and finances, but she never gave up hope that the truth would eventually emerge. The hardest part wasn't losing Michael, she once said. It was knowing that people were trying to cover up his murder and that his sacrifice might be forgotten. The couple's daughter, Sarah, was only 8 when her father disappeared. She grew up thinking he had simply abandoned the family. Learning the truth about his heroic actions and tragic death was both devastating and healing. I spent my childhood angry at my father for leaving us, Sarah explains. But when I learned what really happened, I realized he didn't choose to leave. He was taken from us because he was trying to do the right thing. Sarah now works as a transportation safety inspector, following in her father's footsteps in a system that has been reformed largely because of his sacrifice. She's credited with identifying 15 significant safety violations that could have resulted in major accidents. The Michael Roberts case exposed fundamental problems in how public transportation systems are managed and overseen. It demonstrated that without proper oversight and protection for whistleblowers, even the most safety-conscious employees can be silenced through intimidation or worse. The case also highlighted the vulnerability of public transportation to corruption. With millions of federal dollars at stake and thousands of lives depending on safety systems, the potential for abuse is enormous. But perhaps most importantly, the case showed that individual courage can make a difference. Michael Roberts was just one engineer in a large system, but his willingness to stand up for safety ultimately saved countless lives. The reforms implemented after his death have been adopted by transportation systems worldwide. The Michael Roberts model of independent oversight and whistleblower protection has become the global standard for transportation safety management. 26 years after his death, Michael Roberts continues to protect passengers through the safety systems he died trying to create. The oversight mechanisms established in his name have prevented dozens of potential accidents and exposed numerous safety violations before they could cause harm. The Michael Roberts Foundation has expanded its mission beyond transportation safety. It now supports whistleblowers in all industries who risk their careers and lives to protect public safety. The foundation has helped expose corruption in healthcare, food safety, environmental protection, and numerous other fields. Linda Roberts, now in her 70s, continues to serve as the foundation's chairwoman. She's become a nationally recognized expert on whistleblower protection and has consulted with governments around the world on safety oversight systems. Michael would be proud of what his sacrifice has accomplished, she says. He always said that protecting passengers was his highest responsibility. Through the reforms that resulted from his death, he's still protecting them today. What investigators didn't realize during the initial trials was that the Metropolitan Transit corruption scheme was just the tip of the iceberg. In 2005, 7 years after Michael's death, a routine audit of federal transportation funds revealed connections to a much larger network of corruption. The audit, triggered by anomalies in funding patterns across multiple transit authorities, uncovered what federal prosecutors would later call the largest transportation fraud conspiracy in American history. The scheme involved over 40 transit authorities across 15 states, with total losses exceeding $2.8 billion in federal safety funds. Margaret Foster, already serving life in prison, had been the regional coordinator for this massive operation. From her position at Metropolitan Transit, she had been training other officials in methods of fund diversion, safety report falsification, and whistleblower suppression. The discovery led to a second wave of investigations that would ultimately result in 127 additional arrests, including 3 members of Congress who had been receiving kickbacks in exchange for protecting the scheme from federal oversight. But perhaps the most shocking revelation was yet to come. In 2008, investigators following the money trail discovered that the diverted funds weren't just being pocketed by corrupt officials. A significant portion was being funneled to offshore accounts controlled by an international crime syndicate specializing in transportation and infrastructure fraud. The syndicate, operating under the name Global Transit Solutions, had been systematically targeting transportation systems in 23 countries. Their method was always the same: identify key officials in transit authorities, compromise them through bribes or blackmail, and then systematically drain safety funds while maintaining the appearance of normal operations. Michael Roberts had unknowingly stumbled onto the American branch of this international operation. His evidence didn't just threaten Margaret Foster's local scheme, it threatened to expose a criminal enterprise worth billions of dollars and operating on 5 continents. This revelation explained the extreme measures taken to silence Michael. The stakes weren't just millions of dollars in local corruption, they were potentially billions in international criminal activity. Interpol became involved in the investigation, leading to raids in 12 countries and the arrest of over 300 individuals involved in various aspects of the scheme. The mastermind, a former Soviet transportation minister named Viktor Petrov, was eventually extradited to the United States and sentenced to 3 consecutive life terms. As the full scope of the conspiracy became clear, investigators began to understand just how close the transportation system had come to catastrophic failures. A detailed analysis of safety records from the affected transit authorities revealed 847 incidents that could have resulted in major accidents if not for the skill and vigilance of individual workers. The most shocking near miss occurred just 6 months after Michael's death. On April 22, 1999, a commuter train in Chicago experienced complete brake failure while approaching a crowded station at 55 miles per hour. Only the quick thinking of engineer Sarah Martinez, who managed to derail the train in a controlled manner onto an emergency siding, prevented what could have been hundreds of casualties. Investigation revealed that the brake system had been scheduled for replacement 2 years earlier, but the work had been repeatedly delayed as part of the cost-cutting scheme. The replacement parts had been purchased with federal safety funds, but the money had been diverted and the parts were never installed. Similar incidents occurred in Boston, where a rail bridge collapsed just hours after the last train of the day had crossed it. In Seattle, where a signal malfunction nearly caused a head-on collision between 2 passenger trains, and in Atlanta, where a power system failure left 200 passengers trapped in a tunnel for 8 hours. In each case, the root cause was traced back to safety maintenance that had been deferred or ignored as part of the fund diversion scheme. The investigation also revealed the personal cost of the conspiracy's efforts to silence potential whistleblowers. Michael Roberts wasn't the only transit worker who had tried to report safety violations. Between 1994 and 1998, at least 23 other employees had attempted to report problems through official channels. Of these 23 workers, 7 had been fired for unrelated reasons within months of making their reports. 4 had been transferred to positions where they had no access to safety information. 3 had received anonymous threats that convinced them to drop their complaints. Most tragically, 2 other workers had died under suspicious circumstances. James Crawford, a track inspector in Philadelphia, had been found dead in his home from an apparent gas leak just days before he was scheduled to testify about track maintenance violations. Maria Gonzalez, a signal technician in Denver, had died in a car accident after her brakes failed, despite having had her car serviced just weeks earlier. These deaths had been investigated by local police and ruled accidental, but the federal investigation revealed evidence suggesting that both workers had been murdered to prevent them from exposing safety violations. The revelation that Michael Roberts was part of a pattern of violence against safety advocates added new urgency to the prosecutions and strengthened support for the whistleblower protection measures that were being implemented. One of the most sophisticated aspects of the conspiracy was the technical methods used to hide safety violations from federal inspectors. The scheme involved custom software designed to generate false safety reports and manipulate inspection databases. The software, developed by a team of programmers working for Global Transit Solutions, could automatically generate plausible-looking maintenance records, inspection reports, and safety compliance documentation. The system was so sophisticated that it could even create false employee timesheets and purchase orders to support the fabricated reports. When federal inspectors arrived for routine audits, they would be shown computer records indicating full compliance with all safety regulations. The actual maintenance logs, which showed the true state of the systems, were kept in parallel databases that were hidden from official view. The software also included an early warning system that would alert conspirators when federal investigators were making inquiries that might expose the scheme. This allowed them to temporarily restore critical safety systems during inspection periods, then return to deferred maintenance once the inspectors left. Michael Roberts had discovered this digital deception when he noticed discrepancies between the computer records and the actual condition of the trains he operated. His investigation into these discrepancies had led him to uncover the broader conspiracy. The revelation of the international scope of the conspiracy triggered one of the largest international law enforcement operations in history. Codenamed Operation Rail Guardian, The investigation involved agencies from 23 countries working together to dismantle the Global Transit Solutions Network. The operation faced significant challenges. Many of the key figures had fled to countries without extradition treaties with the United States. Others had assumed new identities and disappeared into the international criminal underground. Viktor Petrov, the mastermind of the operation, had been living under an assumed name in a luxury compound in Paraguay. His capture required a joint operation between U.S. Marshals, Interpol agents, and Paraguayan special forces. The raid on his compound revealed evidence of similar operations targeting power grids, water systems, and telecommunications infrastructure around the world. The operation also uncovered a sophisticated money laundering network that had been used to hide the proceeds of the transportation fraud. Investigators traced funds through shell companies in the Cayman Islands, numbered accounts in Switzerland, and cryptocurrency exchanges in Eastern Europe. By 2010, law enforcement agencies had recovered over $1.8 billion in stolen funds and assets. While this represented only about 65% of the total theft, it was enough to fund a comprehensive restoration of safety systems across all affected transit authorities. Today, the Michael Roberts case is considered a watershed moment in transportation security. The reforms implemented in response to his death have been adopted by transportation systems worldwide and have prevented countless potential disasters. The Michael Roberts Global Transportation and Safety Initiative, established in 2010, now monitors transportation safety in over 80 countries. The initiative uses artificial intelligence and blockchain technology to create tamper-proof safety records that cannot be manipulated by corrupt officials. The initiative has already detected and prevented 47 attempted corruption schemes similar to the one that cost Michael his life. In each case, the early warning systems established in Michael's memory have allowed authorities to intervene before safety systems could be compromised. Perhaps most importantly, the initiative has protected over 300 transportation workers who have come forward with safety concerns. These modern-day whistleblowers are provided with legal protection, financial support, and physical security when necessary. The technology developed for the initiative has also been adapted for use in other critical infrastructure sectors. Similar monitoring systems now protect power grids, water treatment facilities, and telecommunications networks from corruption and sabotage. Even today, 26 years after Michael's death, the investigation continues. Cold case units in multiple countries are still working to identify and prosecute individuals involved in the Global Transit Solutions Network. New evidence emerges regularly as digital forensics technology advances and as witnesses come forward with information. In 2023, the development of quantum computing technology allowed investigators to decrypt communications that had been intercepted during the original investigation, but were too complex to decode with earlier technology. These communications revealed additional details about the conspiracy and led to new arrests in 3 countries. The investigation has also revealed connections to other major infrastructure scandals, including the collapse of the Morandi Bridge in Italy and the Grenfell Tower fire in London. While the full extent of Global Transit Solutions activities may never be known, it's clear that the network was responsible for far more death and destruction than initially understood. The ongoing investigation serves as a reminder that the fight for transportation safety is never truly over. As technology advances and systems become more complex, new vulnerabilities emerge that require constant vigilance to detect and prevent. Behind the statistics and legal proceedings are the personal stories of the people whose lives were forever changed by the conspiracy. Linda Roberts has become a powerful advocate not just for transportation safety, but for all whistleblowers who risk their lives to protect the public. She travels regularly to speak at conferences, universities, and government agencies about the importance of supporting those who come forward with evidence of wrongdoing. Her presentations always begin with the same words: "My husband died because he believed that protecting passengers was more important than protecting his job." Sarah Roberts, Michael's daughter, has followed her father's example in a different way. After completing her engineering degree, she spent 5 years working for the Federal Railroad Administration before founding her own consulting company that specializes in transportation safety audits. Her company, Roberts Safety Solutions, has conducted audits for over 200 transportation agencies worldwide. Her unique perspective as the daughter of a murdered whistleblower gives her credibility with both officials and workers who might otherwise be reluctant to report problems. Maria Santos, the passenger who first noticed Michael's empty cabin on that fateful morning, has become an advocate for passenger awareness and safety education. She founded the Vigilant Passenger Network, which trains commuters to recognize signs of safety problems and report them to authorities. The ripple effects of Michael Roberts' death and the subsequent investigation have transformed transportation safety practices around the world. The European Union implemented comprehensive whistleblower protection laws directly modeled on the Michael Roberts Act. Japan established an independent transportation safety monitoring agency with powers similar to those created in the United States. Developing countries have been particular beneficiaries of the reforms. The Michael Roberts Global Initiative has provided funding and expertise to help establish safety monitoring systems in countries where corruption had previously made such oversight impossible. In India, the initiative helped implement safety reforms that have reduced railway accidents by 78% over the past decade. In Brazil, similar reforms have improved urban transit safety and prevented what experts estimate could have been hundreds of casualties from maintenance-related accidents. The initiative has also pioneered new technologies for safety monitoring. Satellite-based track inspection systems can now detect maintenance problems in real time, making it impossible for local officials to hide deferred maintenance from oversight agencies. Artificial intelligence systems analyze patterns in safety reports to identify potential fraud or negligence before it can lead to accidents. These systems have detected over 12,000 potential safety violations that might otherwise have gone unnoticed. The reforms sparked by Michael's death have also had significant economic benefits. By eliminating corruption and ensuring that safety funds are used for their intended purposes, transportation systems have become more efficient and reliable. A 2020 economic analysis found that the safety reforms have generated over $50 billion in economic benefits through reduced accidents, improved system reliability, and increased public confidence in public transportation. The study concluded that every dollar spent on the safety monitoring systems has generated $7 in economic benefits. The reforms have also created new industries and job opportunities. The transportation safety monitoring sector now employs over 100,000 people worldwide, from auditors and inspectors to technology specialists and data analysts. Many of these jobs have gone to former transportation workers who were previously afraid to report safety problems. The protections established in Michael's name have allowed these experienced professionals to use their knowledge to improve safety without fear of retaliation. The success of the transportation safety reforms has also inspired similar initiatives in other sectors. Healthcare, food safety, environmental protection, and financial services have all implemented monitoring systems based on the Michael Roberts model. The disappearance of Michael Roberts on that autumn morning in 1998 initially appeared to be a simple missing person case. A dedicated engineer had seemingly vanished from a moving train, leaving behind only questions and confusion. But the truth was far more complex and far-reaching than anyone could have imagined. Michael Roberts didn't disappear. He was murdered by corrupt officials who saw him as a threat to a criminal enterprise that spanned continents and threatened the safety of millions of people. His death exposed not just local corruption, but an international conspiracy that had been systematically undermining transportation safety for profit. The investigation that followed revealed the true cost of putting greed before safety and the devastating consequences of silencing those who try to protect the public. But Michael's story is ultimately one of triumph over corruption. His courage in documenting safety violations, even in the face of threats and intimidation, ultimately led to reforms that have saved countless lives and transformed transportation safety worldwide. The systems that bear his name continue to protect passengers every day. The foundation established in his memory continues to support other whistleblowers who risk their careers and lives to protect public safety. And the reforms sparked by his death continue to prevent the kind of systematic corruption that cost him his life. Michael Roberts' legacy reminds us that even in the face of overwhelming corruption and power, one person's courage can make a difference that echoes through generations. His final journey wasn't about reaching a destination, it was about ensuring that millions of other journeys could be completed safely. Some sacrifices, it turns out, protect us in ways we never fully understand. And sometimes the greatest victory over evil is ensuring that it can never happen again. If this story moved you, if it made you think about the everyday heroes who protect us and the importance of supporting those who speak truth to power, then please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Every share helps spread awareness about the courage required to protect public safety and the devastating consequences of corruption. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell for more true crime stories that expose corruption and celebrate the heroes who fight against it. Your support helps me continue investigating these important cases and telling these crucial stories that might otherwise be forgotten. Until next time, remember, heroes often wear the most ordinary uniforms. Corruption often hides behind the most respectable facades. And sometimes the greatest courage is found in simply doing what's right, regardless of the consequences.